I've seen the comment before, I've heard the comment before that unless a nurse is at the bedside, they're not really a nurse. Now, I'm no longer at the bedside, but I was at the bedside for a good little bit. And that's not true. Even though I'm no longer at the bedside, I am still a nurse. There are nurses that are at the bedside that are very good. There are nurses that are not at the bedside that are also very good. And despite the reasoning behind it, nurses that are not at the bedside still earn their way into wherever they may be. And that doesn't make them any less of a nurse. That doesn't make them a bad bedside nurse. They may still be excellent bedside nurses. Just for whatever reason, they're no longer at the bedside. I chose to leave the bedside, to be frankly honest, due to the hours of the position that I have now. Bedside nursing, you have hours that are set in stone, and when the hours are over with, you still have to chart. So you may work your 6A to 6P, and then now you have to chart till 8P, or whatever it may be. I decided to leave the bedside specifically due to the hours that I work now. It just works out so much better for me and so much better for my family. I didn't leave because I had to. And so that's why I'm no longer at the bedside. It's just, for the hours. It works out much better for me and my family. Also, a nurse in a specialty isn't any better or worse than a nurse not in a specialty. Med-surg nurses are good. They are great. They are wonderful. They're good at many different things. Med-surg nurses are. They are good at identifying many different problems. They have to be. That's part of med-surg nursing. But to say that a med-surg nurse is better than, say, a cardiac nurse, I couldn't do that. I also couldn't say that a cardiac nurse is better than a med-surg nurse. Maybe in that specific field, yes, but not as a whole. There are nurses that are in surgery, for instance. There are nurses that are in research. They are still very good nurses. They may not be very good at, say, cardiac or med-surg, but at the research that they do or in the surgical facility that they're in, I bet you that they are very good nurses, and that the research or the surgical center may not function without that nurse. So you can't say just because you're not at the bedside you're not a good nurse, or you're not a nurse in general. And you can't say that med-surg nurses are the only nurses, or ICU nurses are the only nurses. ICU nurses are very good. The hospital that I used to work at had specific ICUs. You had cardiac ICU, you had neuro ICU, you had NICU, which is for the children. You had, well, it was for the babies actually, but you get my point. You had specific ICUs to where the best of cardiac go to work there. Now, if you were to ask a nurse from cardiac ICU a question about what I do, they may or may not be able to answer your question. And if you ask me a question about a cardiac ICU question, that a nurse from cardiac ICU could answer, I may or may not be able to answer that question. So we're still very good nurses. We are still nurses. We're just in different fields. So just because you're in a different field, that doesn't make you any less of a nurse or any more of a nurse than any other nurse. We all put in our time. We all did all the steps that we had to do, and some of us chose to go different ways. I loved the bedside. I did. I thought that's where I was going to end up. It just ended up being better for me and my family to leave the bedside. And it's turned out for the best, I think. That's just my opinion. But all nurses are nurses. And just because you're in a specialty doesn't mean you're any better or any worse than any other nurse, any other specialty. That's my spiel for the day. I hope it helps. Thank you much.